while I wasn't sure if I wanted to talk about this, after everything that's been going on and all the recent events, I think that this is something that I am going to touch up on. And today we're going to be talking about the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics ended the season last year 51-31, and not only that, but as of January 9th, they were 31-20 going into the postseason, and they were one of the hottest teams going into the postseason. Not many people expected it. You saw them kind of the midway point of the season. They're kind of a 500 team, if even below 500 team. And no one really expected what was to come out of the Boston Celtics season. But as we all saw, they played hard in the playoffs. They beat the Bucks, which I thought was their hardest matchup. They beat the Celtics. They swept the Celtics 4-0. And that ended up leading them to the NBA Finals. Now, even though they did not necessarily quite win the NBA Finals, I think it's a feat of its own to actually reach the NBA Finals, especially with a team that nobody suspected would get there. While they are a very deep team, they just, to me, didn't have the wow factor that I expected a team to have to make it to the final. I thought that they were going to get beat by the Nets, and they surprised me there. I thought for sure they were going to get beat by the Bucks, and to no avail. Grant Williams shot perfect that last game and led him to a victory. So with that being said, while there was a lot of upside coming into next year for the Boston Celtics, coming off of what seemed to be such a hot year, there's been just such demise in this offseason. Starting with, honestly, I think a big hit that they're going to take outside of the very obvious thing that I'm going to talk about later on is Robert Williams being out. I think it was 8 to 10 weeks due to a leg injury, right? And I'm not sure what a lot of people think about Robert Williams. I am pro Robert Williams. I am under the camp that he is one of the better centers in the NBA. I don't think he's quite at the top, but he's one of those guys who is going to do it all for you. He's going to play phenomenal defense. He's going to get you some points on offense. But most of all, he's a hustle guy. And he is a player that makes the right play, and I would love to have him on any of my teams, right? You want someone like Robert Williams, someone who is going to be a great defender and the defensive anchor of your team, as well as someone who doesn't necessarily need the ball in their hands and can do stuff without it, play make as well. And honestly, I really like Robert Williams. Texan alumni, shouts out to him. But yeah, I think it's very tragic that he ended up being injured and is going to be out for some time. That seems to be a common recurrence with him, is that he keeps getting injured. And I wish that maybe he would just take some time to actually reacclimate his body as opposed to play on it. I know they needed him in the postseason, and he's part of the reason why they succeeded so well and they made it so far in the postseason. But I think that honestly, allowing him some time to rehab and maybe be ready for the second half of the season is what the Celtics are going to do. I think they had some great pickups this offseason and adding Malcolm Brogdon to the team. J.D. Davison, I really like him as a draft pick. And I think just players like that are going to help them take it to the next step. I know Derek White was a late addition last year, and I thought he played phenomenal, honestly, for his role, of course. And so there's a lot of upside coming into the year. Into next year, coming off of a great season, I thought, hey, they really could be there again next year, barring any injuries or anything crazy. And of course, that's what happens. Robert Williams is out. And then the big elephant in the room, that I'm going to talk about is their head coach, Ime Udoka. Did not expect anything like that to come out. It's very left field. I don't necessarily agree with the punishment. I would say a year is too long, but I also don't quite grasp the idea of what maybe really went on. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily have been put out there. Obviously, we know that he had some sexual relations with a female staff member, but what I don't see is why that would regard a suspension of a full year. I would see maybe he deserves some punishment. He shouldn't be doing that. There's a line that shouldn't be crossed as a head coach, as a team player, right? And he crossed that line. But I don't think him just having some sexual relationship with a staff member is worthy of maybe a full year suspension, maybe a couple months at most. So that kind of leads me to believe that something else is going on behind the scenes that hasn't been talked about. It's hard for me to really believe that he just hooked up with someone and that was it, right? And he gets a full year, right? I think there's got to be more details. I saw on Twitter, someone had tweeted out that we don't really know, and it was from a reporter, right, that we didn't really understand the magnitude of how bad the thing that he did was, but nothing else has come out from there. I think that what's going to happen is they're just going to keep it hush-hush, and we're all going to be flabbergasted at the idea that he's suspended for a year, but we're not really ever going to know what happens until maybe a little later down. Someone in an interview says something and it slips out. Who knows? I just think they're going to keep it hush-hush. It just really stinks because it's going to be really hard for the Celtics to be as good as they were without him. I know that a coach doesn't play on the court, but he plays a huge role in, hyping up his guys, drawing up the right plays, and he was one of the better coaches in the NBA. So I think that he is definitely going to be missed, and I think that if the Celtics don't succeed like we expect them to, because their roster, I'm looking at it right now, Malcolm Brogdon, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, and Robert Williams. I mean, that's a pretty hefty starting 5-6 players, right? One of them's gonna have to come off the bench. Probably that's hard. You got Malcolm Brogdon point, Jaylen Brown shooting guard. Then you gotta have Jason Tatum as your small forward, Al Horford as your power forward, and then Robert Williams as your center. I guess you coming off the bench, you got guys like Danilo Gallinari, Derek White, Grant Williams. You have a lot of good, Malcolm Brogdon even. Like, you have a lot of great names on that team. And that's why, they're deep. They're extremely deep. They're one of the deepest teams in the NBA, and that's why I've had high hopes for them. But I'm not sure if, the lack of their head coach and having some random interim coach them this year is going to lead them to a successful season. Only time will tell, and maybe this team is that good and that deep where the coach doesn't matter. But as we've seen before, a coach really does matter in a lot of situations. So I'm interested to see how it's going to play out. And honestly, I have high hopes for the team. I don't hate them. I've never been a lover of the Celtics. I've always been one to bet against them, but that's because one of my brother's best friends is a Celtics fanatic, and I always bet against them. And I'm a Miami Heat fan, and so there's, they're always playing against each other, etc., competing with who's going to make the finals, right? But I think I'm just interested to see how the season is going to go, and I'm hoping that this upcoming NBA season for the Boston Celtics isn't a disaster, because I'm really hoping that they come out of this strong and are able to succeed over it. But yeah, that's all I got for today, guys. As always, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think. What do you think is going to happen with the Boston Celtics? Do you think they're going to make it back to the NBA Finals, or are they just going to be a playoff team, if even that, right? I'm sure they'll probably be a playoff team, but just for speculation, of course. But as always, you guys take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.